The Audi R8, and before we get to it, let's take a look what J and L cut means. Okay, this is basically talking head or interview editing. You've seen this in documentary, interview, or any trailer that you've seen. You probably notice if there's a new trailer, they all start with someone talking. You don't see who's talking, it's only a voiceover. And they show you all sorts of stuff to confuse you. It's a trailer. And eventually you will see who's talking. So that is a J cut. Okay? So let's just kind of read it here. What is a J cut and an L cut? Okay, an L cut is when the audio from the preceding scene continues to play over the footage from the following scene. Meaning, when someone's talking and all of a sudden they disappeared, but they're still talking. You see their face, okay, and then they continue to speak, but they no longer show them. They're showing some B-rolls, but they still have a voiceover on top. So that's an L cut, okay? A J cut is just the reverse of the L cut. It's, you don't see that person yet, but you hear them. You hear them speak, okay? And then they're showing some other footage, most likely B-rolls, okay? And then eventually they will show their face, who's talking. So it can, one talking head or one interview can actually have a J and an L cut, where they're talking, then they show their face, then their face disappear, but they're still talking. So that's a J and an L cut. So why J and L cut? It's just the shape that you get out of the edit, okay? So let's take a look at it here, all right? So let me increase my track height here a bit. Get rid of my inspector. Where's my track height? Right here, okay? So I'm just gonna give that a little bit of a preference or lower the audio a bit. All right, so let's say for Paul right here.
And then you put in the Quattro drivetrain, which is a fantastic...
Basically, your classic talking head interview. Okay, and for this to be a J cut, we can't see Paul. Agree? So we're going to put something else here.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, could someone turn those things on, please?
Yeah, this one's on. It's just not receiving.
Oh. Could you? Oh, there you go. All right, let's. Oh, could you get the HDMI? That one. Thank you. All right. Is it on both? Okay. So basically, what we're needing would be B-roll, right? So let's just kind of use this as an example for the J and L cut. So if I have, let's say, I'm just going to put some footage here on top. All right. Doesn't matter which one. The point is, there's some footage, and then you're not seeing the what do you call this? The talking head. Right, so let me just let's grab that in there. All right, let's take a look at this one.
And then you put in the Quattro drivetrain, which is a fantastic drivetrain, which means it's an all-wheel drive car, but in the R8.
The talking head. So that's a J cut. And the reason why they call it a J cut because of the shape right here. You see it? So the B-roll is on top. Okay, so that's the J right there. And then the L cut, of course, the opposite of that. So if we have, just going to copy those and paste them over here. All right, you see the L right there? So that's why they call them kind of J and L cut. So an L cut is basically someone's talking.
The vehicle, but you also have the security of an all-wheel drive.
Their face disappears.
That means
they're still talking.
Weather or just how the car approaches.
Okay, so that's an L cut.
Are very easy to understand, to
All
decipher.
right, so part of your rubric is that you need a J and L cut for which talking head? First and third. Very good. Okay, so whatever we choose for the middle one is basically what? Just voice over. We're going to put B-rolls on top. what is a B-roll? Basically footage for coverage, right? There's the A track and B track, basically. That's why it's on B-roll. All right, so that's why whenever you're in production, you're trying to do, let's say, a news package, or you're covering an event. After they've done the interview and all that, what do they tell you? Go out there, shoot some B-rolls. You're gonna shoot people talking, playing, whatever the event is, so that then when it comes to the J and L cut or the interview, you'll be able to supply footage of what the voiceover is talking about or the talking head is talking about. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if the talking head is talking about roller coaster rides and whatnot, and then you put someone eating funnel cake, bad B-roll. Okay? It has to pertain to the information. Okay? And you got to match that. Okay? So that's why B-rolls are so important, because they're your coverage. You can mess up a lot of stuff during the interview. You can patch them up. Okay? All right. So that's our J and L cut. Okay? So now part of your rubric is that you need to pick the order of the three mandatory talking head, right? So let's take a look at the first one. This is Paul 008. Okay? So let's kind of analyze it.
The thing that's interesting about a high rev V8 engine or a V10 engine is every 1,000 RPMs it changes in tone and octave, and it's almost like a symphony going on behind you, and you're controlling it with your right foot. So it's really wonderful stuff, and you get the hair standing up on the back of your neck, and once that thing crests over 8,000 RPMs, whether it's the V8 or the V10, it's an incredible experience.
All right, nothing really stand out on that one except it's kind of long. Okay, so can you use that for the beginning? Probably you could. Or you can use it for the ending and middle. Probably you could also. So it's let me just make sure here. Oh, I'm already running on the crappiest resolution. Okay, so it's still kind of dying. All right, so that's 008. Okay, let's watch 04 and analyze it.
And then you put in the Quattro drivetrain.
All right, right off the bat, we know that can't be the beginning, because what's the first word he said? Yeah, kind of like when you read the Bible. Therefore, henceforth, so if you're one of them that likes to pick on just, then you go to, then they call you out on the therefore. Okay? All right, so 004, definitely not a beginning. It can be an ending or middle, right? So let's watch 006.
You know right away when a car is good. And you don't know until you drive it, and you really don't know until you drive it around a racetrack, especially a supercar. And the R8 really just took to it.
Okay, so that kind of is like a given. That's probably the one you should start with, okay? All right, but let's kind of understand what he's saying here.
You know right away when a car is good. And you don't know until you drive it, and you really...
So, I mean, you know right away, but you don't know. So it's kind of like you know right away your future husband or wife, right? But you don't know because you've never met them. Okay? But, anyway, so 006 is our starting one, right? So I have it right here, 006. That's our beginning one, right? Now they're gonna basically audition for the middle and the end, all right? So most likely the middle is when he says end, it's connecting, but that can also be the ending, but let's listen to it.
And then you put in the Quattro drivetrain, which is a fantastic drivetrain, which means it's an all-wheel drive car, but in the R8, it's biased to have most of the drive towards the rear with the vehicle, but you also have the security of an all-wheel drive system, and that means if it's inclement weather.
So that's
or
a lot of technical stuff he's talking about. So most likely that's going to be the middle. That's where most of the B-rolls and just voiceover, right? So we're not even going to see Paul Rader. So 004 is our middle one, and then finally probably the last one will be the 008. Let's take a look at it and preview it.
The thing that's
Let's just preview it here without the rave music.
The thing that's interesting about a high rev V8 engine or a V10 engine is every 1,000
Still
RPMs it
talking about
changes
technical
in
stuff,
tone and octave,
okay?
and it's almost like a symphony going
But
on
he's
behind you, and
talking
you're
more about
controlling it with your
sound
right
and
foot.
experience.
So it's really wonderful stuff, and you get the hair standing up on the back of your neck, and once that thing crests over 8,000 RPMs, whether it's the V8 or the V10, it's an incredible experience.
All right, so it's kind of wrapping it up. It's like sunsetting what he's saying. So definitely 008 will be the last, right? So we start with 006, the middle one is 004, and your last talking head is 008. All right, so part of the rubric is that we give this a left lower third, all right? And again, I didn't check what Audi uses as their font, but it's definitely not Times Roman, okay? I can guarantee it's not Times Roman. So I'm just gonna play it safe on this one. I'm gonna go with Arial, all right? And then the Audi Car Expert. I'm gonna change that to Arial also. We don't have, even if we know what it is, we don't know. What do you call it? We don't have it. We can't have it, the Audi font anyway, even if we know which one it is. Okay. Another thing we can do right here is that we could probably add a drop shadow on this title. All right, the drop shadow is already available. It's pretty dark in here, so there's no way. But just for safety, okay. Just for safety, let's add a drop shadow. Okay, you want a drop shadow just in case there'll be a lighter background that would show up in and that would swallow the text, right? It blends with the background. Here, it's not an issue, so I'm just going to offset this by a bit. It's even hard to tell right there, but so +4 and -4. Okay, just for safety, I'm adding your drop shadow is always enabled in Davinci Resolve. You just have to change the offset because it's on, but it's at the back precisely. So you need to scoot it down and scoot it over left or right. Okay, so we have this one. We don't know the timing yet. Our timing is long enough to read, but we're just putting it out there. So we're just kind of fulfilling the rubric. Another thing we talked about last time is that mandatory 1 minute and 30 seconds for the music. You probably don't need to do anything at the beginning of the music. The ending, you'll have to fade it. But you shouldn't be touching any part of the music other than lowering the volume so that you could hear what the talking head is talking about. Because if you make any changes, all that hard work that you do to lower the volume of the music when there's a talking head will be wasted, right? It's just not going to be there. All right, so other thing right here is that it's just a B-roll project, okay? We studied the footage a little bit and then we deemed it that most likely the beginning when the music is subtle and just slow and whatnot, this is probably interior territory, all right? Because look at all the interior shots other than the revving one. So you probably, when he's talking about symphony behind your ear or whatever, it's probably what it is when you rev the car, okay? Right here, it's the beginning when it opens up. We also talk about probably this is the ending when they close the lights, okay? And then there's some things here that you can kind of play with, all right? And then finally, if we're using 006 right here, when
Especially a supercar. And the R8 really just took to it.
he actually mentions the name, and guess what? One of the B-rolls right here shows R8. That's probably the only shot that's close up with the name of the car, all right? So I can litter this thing pretty much. I'm gonna basically go like this. I'm gonna use all the B-roll on video track too, okay? To kind of separate our talking head right here, okay? So it's kind of difficult when the resolution is lower. You're missing. I'm missing all my zoom buttons and whatnot. Anyway, yeah, I'm gonna. So there's the R8, right? So and whenever you use B-roll, all this dolly shots, almost 100%, they never start correctly. They're wobbly a little bit, then they get their momentum. Then they smooth out. So make sure that when you use anything with dolly that you're trimming the parts before they get settled. Because they're pushing something or they're using a machine, it just wobbles at the beginning because position, and then it gets smoother after, right? Here, that's not much more, but here you can tell definitely for this one. Okay, when it's got, okay, especially when there's equipment in the reflection. Okay, so whenever this thing gets started, you can see they're still not gonna. Okay, now they're getting to the flow. You see a little bit of zigzagging at the beginning, so just be mindful of those. Okay, so I'm gonna put some of this right here. I'm gonna mark in, press I, and then mark out somewhere. All right, so I'm just gonna grab that. We're just gonna put some B-rolls anyway. So okay, and I'm kind of spacing this out a little bit. You never want your. We don't know their proper position yet, but you don't want to put your talking head back to back like this. Okay. Okay. Watch this one.
And the R8 really just took to it.
Okay, so you got time to kind of.
And then you put in the quattro.
All right, so the pacing is correct, but when you butt this together like this, it will sound exhausting.
And the R8 really just took to it. And then you put in the quattro drop.
All right, it just sounds wrong, right? Whenever you put them like you're rushing the event, all right? So we're gonna put some separation right there. And I'm gonna keep kind of adding to this one right here. So probably just use the last part right there where it says R8. All right. We do need what? An L cut, right? You need J and L cut for the first and third. This one, all B-roll, meaning it's just voiceover. So technically we could actually separate this if you don't want to get confused later on, unchain it, select just the video, okay? And then you could actually right click and disable this clip so you don't see it. You never want to delete stuff in case you want to see something. Then you got to bring it back to the timeline, okay? So basically I just unchained it, click the video, and then right click and disabled, uncheck enabled clip to basically mute it, right? Mute the video. All right. So because if you can't do it right here, this is per layer. Everything on that layer will be muted. So you just want one right there. So let's see here. And we're just kind of rough cutting this. None of these things are properly timed. All right. So you probably get the point. We're just putting this stuff kind of together. All right, so maybe that's when Paul starts talking, so we can put the first kind of J cut right there. I'm going to zoom in a bit. How much J cut? Well, we'll see.
You know right away when a car is good. And you don't know until you drive it, and you really don't know until you drive it around a racetrack, especially a supercar. And the R8 really just took to it.
All right, so probably need to move this one a little bit over here because the music is starting to kick in, and we don't want to end the first the first talking head when there's a few more seconds where the music picks up. It's kind of like the hang time right there, and you didn't, properly time it. So I'll probably move this one here and then extend this video here a bit, okay? But here's a little technique whenever, let's say you're really happy with the section that you cut right here, but you need more video of the back of the video right here. So if I play this one, so you got your timing right here, but you want to see more of this video right here. So instead of dragging this thing, retrimming it, you can use the the trim mode right here. This is the tool where you can set it in the center and then you can just drag this thing so you're actually keeping your trim, but you are sliding inside the video. Okay? Because you could do everything with just this tool. It's just a little bit archaic because you have to go like this, right? And then you got to go back there and then find that spot. I mean, nothing wrong with that. It's just you'll waste a lot of time. Okay? But the trim mode right here, it lets you slip and slide within the clip and it keeps your trim. Okay? So it's a nice little tool that you can do with that. So let's say
You know right away when a car is good, and you don't know
okay,
until
all
you
right. So let's say that's enough for our J cut. Okay, and we're gonna put our title. Okay, you don't want your title to start exactly where Paul pops up.
way when a car is good.
You don't want those information kind of competing against each other. You need to see Paul first, then a fraction of a second the title shows up. Okay, and again, I just put some 10 frame fades right there. Okay, just for the sake of having something in there. Yes.
I want to ask about the beginning of that audio. I know you mentioned it earlier about what he said not really making sense. Should we still keep it then? Even though we
Well,
can't
what is the rubric?
Yes.
What is the rubric about the talking head?
Can't cut any of it.
Yes, you can't cut any of it. So
You know right away when a car is good, and you don't know until you drive it.
all
and
right,
you
that's probably
really
way
don't.
too long for Paul's name. Okay, but I'm not gonna trim that for you. That's for you to decide. Okay, and then finally we're gonna put this probably our L cut.
Supercar, and the R8 really
Okay, and the R8, of course, it's a good example to use the trim right there. So I want it to kind of just show up when
supercar, and the
a little bit more.
R8 really
Oh, a little bit. I went too much. Maybe right here.
is a supercar, and the R8 really just took to it.
All right. Well, you guys time it properly. Go find that in the. Okay.
Supercar,
So.
and the R8 really. Just,
All right. So you guys figure that out. All right. So that's when it's going to pop. So this satisfy our first J and L cut. Agree? All right. So after that one, so it's probably the more exciting outside shots. Okay. When it starts it. All right. And it's a good contrast with showing the back of the car. Now, why not show the front, right? And this just kind of be rolling. Careful not to show any shadow of the equipment. Okay? So we could start right here, maybe. Press I and then O. So just rough cutting. Okay? You know if one shot is too long, you'll know it. Okay? Whenever you doubt yourself, you go like, I think the shot is too long, then it is normal.
Just took to it.
Okay, and then you can put a lot of stuff. The thing you want to avoid here is a jump cut. There are shots right here where you could cut it back to back, showing the front of the car, and it might look like it's or the back of the car. Okay, like right here. It's not the same shot, but you want to avoid that. You want to avoid a jump cut looking shot where you're going to use front of the car and the size of the car is almost the same. Okay? So to be safe, show the front and then the back of the car. Show a smaller car or a bigger car. All right? You don't want to commit jump cut simply because you use two footage back to back that are very similar in framing, of course, of the same car. Okay? All right, so I'm going to maybe show this one right here. Again, this is totally up to you here. You know, I'm just kind of rough cutting it. And then maybe show a little bit of this when they kind of show up. All right, just kind of rough cutting it here. Let's take a look at what we have.
And the R8 really just took to it.
You need to make your cuts more exciting than my example right here.
And then you put in the Quattro drivetrain, which is a fantastic drive.
All right, so we have kind of like a lead in, all right? So using B-roll until he goes to the more technical stuff. So the middle 004 talking head here.
Which means it's an all-wheel drive car. But
So it's talking about basically the slow-mo shots, okay? So it's talking about the capability of the car, if it's safe to use on certain elements, weather elements and whatnot. So, okay. So right here, this is basically slow-mo galore.
Fantastic drivetrain, which means it's an all-wheel drive car, but in the R8.
All right, so you could be showing some of these really cool slow motion shots. And it's all voiceover at this point.
Which means it's an
So
all-wheel
we're showing the
drive
side
car, but in
right
the
here.
R8, it's biased to have most of the drive towards the rear wheel. Typically,
So it says rear wheel. We can maybe show this one right here where trying to show some control, even though pretty sure this driver is spraying. That's a joke.
drive feel and balance with the vehicle, but you also have
All right, and then what else did he say? Inclement weather, all that kind of stuff, right? So I'm just gonna again rush this thing, just kind of put all this thing in here, and then finally he mentions about inclement weather, right? It's quite obvious right here, you know, where all these things kind of fall. And of course, do a better job than I do, just slapping these things in here.
Quattro drivetrain, which is a fantastic drivetrain, which means it's an all-wheel drive car, but in the R8,
Get the timing
it's
correctly.
biased to have
So
most
that's
of
how
the
you
drive
make it
towards
more
the rear wheel,
interesting and
typically about
whatnot.
80% or so. And so you have a very rear-wheel drive feel and balance with the vehicle, but you also have the security of an all-wheel drive system, and that means whether
You know, or maybe swap this thing here so that you look for it.
which means it's an all-wheel drive car, but in the R8, it's biased to have most of the drive towards the rear wheel, typically about 80% or so. And so you have a very rear-wheel drive feel.
You don't need to. It's already slow.
With the vehicle.
You know, but you can play with it. You can crank up the speed. It's as long as it relates to the information. Okay.
But you also have the security of an all-wheel drive system, and that means if it's inclement weather.
Because if you do some visual trickery to it, will it detract to the information being said? Because you don't want information fighting over another information, okay? It's kind of like in photography, right? Keep the background not busy so that they'll concentrate on the foreground. So it's the same
just
kind
how
of...
the car approaches its limits are very easy to understand, to decipher, and therefore control.
All right, and then probably here we go back to exterior B-rolls. Let's say you really want to annoy me, you can include the sound right here, or you can just drag some video, audio, you know, because I have to grade all this, I have to watch, you know, how, yeah, so imagine just, yeah, about 15 seconds of that each time you decided to, like, yeah, I think they could use a little bit more of that, you know. And this, oh, all right. He's talking about symphony to the ear and whatnot, right?
Interesting about a high rev V8 engine or a V10 engine is every 1,000 RPM.
All right, so maybe he says every 1,000 RPM. You find that when they 6 and 7 right there. Totally up to you. Again, it's B-roll stuff, right? Or you could put some of this sound, because for Paul, he said this is symphony to his ear. So he loves this stuff. Oh. Actually, a short strap.
Wonderful stuff. And
All right, and of course, you can't just use this just one time. There's plenty of footage here that you can go back to. All right, so the B-rolls are, I mean, I used this right here before, but they're so long you can take parts everywhere. No one can tell you're reusing the same footage and just kind of dumping it in there. Like on this one, I'm going to go back to this, and then I like this kind of changing lane right here where it goes out of frame. Okay, kind of like you're ending it. So
it crests over 8,000 RPMs, whether it's the V8 or the V10.
all right, it's like it exited, and then you stick your
The V10. It's an incredible experience.
all right. It's all cheese, people. Okay, so let's say we're happy with that, all right? So, and this is our full edit right here. Let's say this is it. It's done, okay? We now go to the last part, which is the audio editing. So, we know for a fact that we need to bring back the volume of this one from previous, okay? And then we're probably going to fade this one here as well, okay? So, it has a natural fade. We got to help it also, okay? So how do we lower the volume on this particular spot right here? Well, that's actually pretty easy to do. All you have to do is click Option along the gain or volume line right there. So let me increase the size of that first so you could see it, okay? And I'm going to scoot this over to prioritize that. I'm going to save this also because this is probably where it will crash. Okay, so since we don't want to affect the entire volume of the song, we just want sections, it's probably safe to say that we can click on Option or Alt. Okay, when I click that, I get a dot or a keyframe. I'm just going to go like this to kind of secure all those talking head. Okay. So you can't touch any of this stuff though, because if I move this, guess what? It affects it from the beginning, right? So each talking head, you're going to need a minimum of 4, okay, to do this. So let me zoom in on this first one. And you'll be graded how nicely you lower that volume right there. So it needs to be perfect. It can't be abrupt or, So I'm going to click here, 2 more. And then I can lower the volume of the music. So when we preview this,
you know right away when a car is good, and
so
you don't know until you drop.
Mellowed a bit, maybe a little bit more.
You know right away
so that
when
the
a car
talking
is
head,
good,
you can hear
and
it.
you don't know until you drive it, and you really don't know until you drive it around a racetrack, especially a supercar. And the R8 really just took to it.
All right, so, and that's just by luck. All right? It looks like it works with right position those, but you'll be graded with that because if you made a mistake right here, then the volume drops too soon, it's jarring to the ear. It doesn't sound right. Or you pick up the volume right away while Paul is still talking, it drowns his ending words, then you'll be graded with that. Well, when I say graded, badly graded, right? So let's go with this one. So I'm going to add 2 more on this one. And there's no subtlety on the sound on this one. Look at the waveform, it's spiking, right? So I'm going to lower that like so. Let's take a look.
And then you put in the Quattro drivetrain,
All right.
which is a fantastic drive.
Maybe a little bit more. And use headphones, folks, when you do this. Now let's have monitor speakers in your editing suite. You can't be relying on the acoustics of your room with those speakers, Use your headphones so you can preview.
And then you put in the Quattro drivetrain.
Maybe a little bit more.
Fantastic drivetrain, which means
Okay? So that's basically how you kind of address that. Can you hear Paul? You can also crank up Paul a little bit, but make sure you balance all the other talking head. Not one talking head should be louder than the other. Okay?
And then you put in the Quattro drive.
All right, maybe a little bit more to the right on this one. I want the music to run.
And then you put in the quattro drive.
Okay. And finally, the last one, the same thing. Option or Alt click. Lower that. Maybe drag this a little bit. That's because that's ending. You can kind of tell what's going to happen there.
The thing that's interesting about a high rev V8 engine,
All right.
the V10, it's an incredible experience.
All right. What else did we forget? So that's just Alt click. Okay. You need a J and L cut here. Okay. So I could probably just move some of these. Maybe shrink this one here, and I don't know when he says symphony to his ear, but I do want to see his face going into the end other than the beginning, all right? Because he got a little bit expressive at the end, so let's take a
You're controlling it with your right foot. So it's really wonderful stuff. And, you know, you get the hair standing up on the back of your neck, and once that thing crests over 8,000 RPMs, where the
maybe scoot that a little bit right there.
back of your neck, and once that thing crests over 8,000 RPMs, whether it's the V8 or the V10, it's an incredible experience.
All right, you can put it here or you can put it right there, but you need a JL cut. Find the spot where it works. You can put it in the middle for sure, okay? So rubric calls for JNL cut at the first and last talking head, middle talking head, it's all voiceover. B-roll galore everywhere. You time your title properly, long enough to read. Do this last, because imagine you're doing this and you ended up moving for 1 second to the right. That's redo of all the work, so that's why sound is final cut. Okay? All right, and you don't need to fade at the beginning of the sound because it just starts boom. All right. You don't need to fade any of the video. They do have a natural fade to them. They start from black and they end. They fade to black. Okay? All right. And that's it for our Audi.